Hello, my name is Burl, and I'd like to speak to you because I have conceived of a way to arrest and reverse global warming. I'm not going to tell you that the burning of fossil fuels is not the source of the problem. It is. But an NTSB investigator, accident investigator, I remember he was on camera and he said, rarely is there one cause for a catastrophe. Usually it's a confluence of many things coming together at just the right moment to create a problem. Well, that's the way it is with global warming. We've spent a lot of time on greenhouse gases, and that's for real, that's true, and it's man-made. But there's another component to the problem that's not paid so much attention to, and that is water. Man gets better at doing a thing the longer he does it. Men have been drawing water from the earth since before recorded time. In the advent of industrialization, men began pumping vast amounts of water out of the earth, out of the deep aquifers, out of the sources that had been feeding mankind in our last 6,000 years of history. Because we were able to bring it up so much more quickly and pump it so much further across the surface, we've used it extensively. And we've brought a lot of water to the surface. Saudi Arabia's aquifer, the capacity was estimated at 258 billion cubic meters. That's dry. The Oglala aquifer here in the United States, 174,000 square miles. When they first started tapping it, they only had to go down 80 feet to hit water. Now they have to go down 120 feet to strike water. All this water, and aquifers all over the planet. In Libya, Muammar Gaddafi commissioned 15,000 wells pumping an estimated 230 million cubic meters per day. I believe everything's in cubic meters, yeah. Forgive me if my figures are off. I have looked it up though. Okay, so all this water has been entering the weather system. There's more water due to man's efforts on the surface of the earth today than there has been in 20,000 years. Again, there hasn't been this much water on the surface of the earth for 20,000 years, and that's due to man's pumping water to the surface in industrial amounts. We have to get that water. Oh, and water is a heat sink. Water holds on to heat longer than the land. And so by adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, which heat up the atmosphere, at the same time we have increased the ocean's capacity to act as a heat battery, storing up heat all day long and releasing it again in the evening and keeping the atmosphere heated. We have to get that water back underground. We have to desalinate huge, massive amounts of salt water, desalinate it, redistribute it, get it back underground, get it out of the weather cycle. I have conceived of a way to do that. Well, let's explain it first. Siphon-fed solar and nuclear desalination, storage, and redistribution. There are 33 places around the world where we have natural locations that are below sea level. If you were to build a pipeline from the nearest ocean to this depression, close off both ends of the pipeline, run a filler tube to the highest point, and fill both legs of the pipeline, you would then be able to open the valves and induce a siphon flow. That water would run in perpetuity. No energy need be expelled. No energy need be expended to pump that water from point A to the below sea level point B. At point B, you could have a desalination station. To hold on to that point, we have to visualize this pipeline as having an intake end and a resource end. This intake end at the oceans could be placed in toxic eddies, places where pollution is known to collect. Yeah, put the intake for the desalinator right there where all that nasty stuff is and suck it up. And remember, there will be a slight suction at the intake end. This will facilitate remediation programs in marshlands and industrial areas. You'll finally be able to disturb some of that sediment that's holding zinc and nickel and heavy metals, cadmium. You know, you'll be able to suck that up and sift that out and let all the nasty stuff flow in with the salt water, head to the desalinator. Now, because the pipeline, the water in the pipeline is moving, it has kinetic energy. Well, that means that every pipeline that you build is a candidate for inline hydroelectric generation. You can put inline hydroelectric generators in the pipeline, so that as the salt water is heading to the nearest depression, it's creating energy. It's creating electricity. Okay? It's starting to pay off before you even start with the desalination effort. Okay. After you finish the, when the water comes down at the resource end of the pipeline, that's where you would have your desalinators. You'd have first stage would be a solar desalinator using solar energy to boil the salt, boil the water to the point where you can get the salts and the pollutants to drop out. And with proper engineering, it can be, I believe it can be done so that all the pollutants, the heavy metals, all that stuff comes out with the salt. The salt, you can control the viscosity of the salt. The salt should be poured into molds of any shape that you desire. Wheel that onto the hot, dry Mojave to dry and cure. And when those molds, burlite foundations, if you would, are dried and cured, they'd be covered with polycarbonate. Polycarbonate, dried and cured salt. It would be translucent, insulative, pretty strong, depending on how the molds were engineered. And if you could imagine having burlite walls on the upper floors of your house, when the sun comes up, the light would just permeate through the walls. You have translucent light, courtesy of Mother Nature, and burlite panels. Burlite domes will be important. Could be important for, interplanetary travel, domes on Luna, domes on Mars, burlite. It's going to be a big thing, yeah. So, that's what you do with the salt. There's no use for the salt. Okay. Now, the next thing is the desalination secondary stage, which would be nuclear. I say nuclear because you must remember that we're talking about mass amounts of water. Mass amounts of water. The water should be a secondary heat exchanger. If it were nuclear, it would be able to do as much water as you ever want to dream of. Okay? And turn that water to steam. Part of the steam would be channeled to your regular, ordinary, everyday steam-driven electric generators. However, the mass amount of that steam would be ported up into a dome, a condensation dome, a very large area with a refrigerated section in the top. Now the hot steam comes up, hits the refrigerated section, the steam condenses, runs down the sides of the condensation dome into pipes, it's pumped out and onto schedule of reservoirs. Now, I think I can start to get specific. This would be my first set of desalinators at Death Valley and the Salton Sea in the Imperial Valley. Pipelines leading to both these places. There would be many coming across from coming up the San Bernardino Valley, and that's what I'd like to discuss. The Death Valley desalination plant. Okay, so the pipelines coming across, coming up the San Bernardino Valley from Los Angeles, all the way to Death Valley. There are a couple of mountain ranges very close to the end of that trek, which have what they call shadow canyons, where rain drops out, and that's what incurs that desert. Two very nice canyons, though. Very nice, large areas. Used to have oceans in them. Okay. So, the water is boiled a second time. It goes up into the condensation dome. It's condensed into pure water, runs down into pipes, goes to the reservoirs. Now these reservoirs, especially in the San Bernardino Valley, would be high up in the hillsides. You want these pretty high up, because you want to be able to gravity feed a quantity of water downhill to what I call an atomizer. Remember your grandmother's perfume bottle had the bulb on it, you squeeze the bulb, you get that nice little mist? Yeah, that's caused by forcing a quantity of water through a small nozzle. You can duplicate that on a much larger scale, and that's what I propose. Someone said it sounded like that I was describing a snowmaking machine. I don't know, I've never seen one. However, I propose a tower, 60 feet tall, with a rotating louvered head, okay, the throat of which would be lined with stainless steel nozzles. These nozzles would be fed by gravity-fed water stream up through the nozzles, and in the top of the atomizer would be a wind tunnel fan. That's another thing I'd like to mention. Everything that I am about to discuss, if you notice, nothing's new. Every appliance necessary to bring this system online already exists. I'm not inventing anything new, just the way in which they're used. Okay? And so, the atomizer would be turned on. If you're familiar with the Santa Ana winds. The Santa Ana winds occur, I'm rambling now, but I think I'm going to hit all points. The Santa Ana winds occur in the Los Angeles basin when a low pressure system begins to form over the ocean west of Los Angeles. A low pressure system has the effect of drawing in air from surrounding areas, and the most available air is that hot, dry air coming in off of the Mojave, and that low pressure system just sucks it right in. Okay, now with this system, with atomizers placed along the San Bernardino Valley, when it's Santa Ana season, and your desalinator is running, providing you with millions of gallons of water per day to the reservoirs which are holding millions of gallons. Okay, so if you have 10 reservoirs along the San Bernardino Valley, each holding 1,000,000 gallons, and you had atomizers 60 feet tall, pushing out 100,000 gallons of water a minute, and blown with the power of a wind tunnel fan. As the Santa Ana winds roll by, you would turn that hot, dry air flowing off of the Mojave into warm, moist air, which instead of drying out the hillsides and the foliage, would moisturize and provide water vapor and a gentle moistening of all the area. The other thing that would happen is that warm, moist air is just what a low pressure system desires to build a really nice thunderstorm. And the rotation of the earth would drag this building thunderstorm off the coast of LA right up onto Central California. You'd have rain. Yeah, it sounds like weather control. It's not. It's more like weather augmentation. However, these pipelines and can be pushed all the way across country to the Great Salt Lake. Now, the area at the depression, both in the Death Valley and the Salton Sea area, are large enough to accommodate many desalination plants. And pipelines can be sent all over. And like, share the water, share the wealth. Why would you want to hold on to it? Okay? So, with many plants here, some plants, the product of some plants could be sent directly to the Great Salt Lake. And a season of refreshment could begin, you know? And the advantage to refilling the Great Salt Lake is that it is at altitude, but it's salt. So what would have to happen is you would have to pump fresh water straight to the Great Salt Lake, have it mixed with the salt, and then any point below 4,200 feet could host their own desalination plant. And so you would have saltwater lines coming from the lake going to desalination plants of any community that could afford to do it, or wanted to do it. Their state could authorize them to do it. These freshwater pipelines could feed atomizers in the mountain regions where you get all these forest fires up in Idaho and Montana and places like that. And it would all be powered by these two depressions down here, pumping water up here to the Great Salt Lake, and eventually the Great Salt Lake would become fresh. Eventually. Oh, yeah. Also, they're producing electricity. The water is falling down to any point below 4,200 feet. You're going to get a lot of power out of that. Yeah. Northern Mexico could be fed. The plateau area of central Mexico could be fed with water. So, with Baja. But I must insist that when you start designing these pipelines, remember, Native Americans are to control their own source from pipeline to final delivery system. If you do not do this for the Native American nations, you might as well admit right now that you plan to harm them. They must control their own source of water. Or some government, some county, some water company is going to decide that they don't need any water this month. And don't tell me it can't happen. We know you, Wasuchu. Anyway. Yeah. Now, these are natural below seawater points. I propose one for Puerto Rico because fresh water is Puerto Rico's main problem. One below sea level artificial location dug. I mean, they dig pit mines. I don't see why they can't dig an artificial below sea level location and run a pipeline from the ocean just right down to the bottom of the pit. Encourage that flow. The whole point of using the siphon principle is to prevent the necessity for burning fossil fuels. This system so far, it won't cost you any energy. It will return energy all along its route. One artificial below sea level location for Puerto Rico, pump the water to its to a high point, and then gravity feed any extension from there across the island. I believe Puerto Rico's freshwater problem would be solved. Now, we must remember to employ the 1/3 rule. With the product of any of these desalination plants, 1/3 should go directly back to the waters, back to the ocean. Our river management teams and oceanographers and biologists, they can tell us exactly what areas on the shore and up the bays need an infusion of fresh water, where it will do the most good. Listen to them. 1/3 of the waters desalinated here should be returned directly back to the oceans. The second third goes to the atomizers that I've discussed, right? The spreading of water vapor on the Santa Ana winds, and in times of low pressure, you can direct water vapor where it's needed, depending on how many atomizers and what their geographic location is. Or what is their, well, you got it. So, that last third is to be pumped directly back into the local aquifer. The beauty of that is half the job is already done, because any well used to bring the water up can be used to send the water down. However, you can only pump 100% pure water back into the earth. Never even think about adding chlorines or antibiotics, or don't mess with the water, because by pumping the water back down a well, you are bypassing the natural filtration efforts of Mother Earth. If you're going to bypass the filtration efforts, you can only use pure water. And if you pump antibacterials and chemicals to purify the water back into the ground, you're going to kill off life-giving bacteria that have never had to deal with that crap before. If you put any of that stuff in there, you're going to wind up creating new hybrids of germs that have never existed before, because you killed off the natural ones. If you're going to pump water back into an aquifer, you can only pump 100% pure water. Okay, my favorite little spot in the world, because here, we have the Quattara Depression. The Quattara Depression is 133 meters below sea level. It's large, but it has the advantage of being just a very short way from the Mediterranean. Pipeline to the desalination plant will be quickly manufactured. Then there are 3 mountains out here, right? The Tibetsi Mountains, El Massif, and Agahar Mountains. Okay, well, there are 3 mountains out here. The point being that if you pump the water up to the top of the highest one, you can gravity feed the rest of the system. Here you see the pipeline, atomizer lines. This water follows the same 1/3 rule, right? 1/3 directly back to the oceans. And by the way, some of these desalination plants might be built for the purpose of cleaning up harbors. Because remember that suction. Because say if Nigeria was to go up backcountry here and let's see, and create, whoops, wrong way. Well, it didn't work. Where's my little purple tape? Okay. So if Nigeria went up in the backcountry somewhere and built an artificial below sea level location and built a pipeline there, then they could use that suction to clean up the parts along the river that have been polluted by the international oil companies. I think it's Chevron. I really don't know. I shouldn't mention anybody, but there's an oil company that's been spilling in here, and if they built an artificial below sea level location, they could clean up their rivers. Here you see lines going across countries, across state lines. It's for the earth. This has to be done so that all of us survive. Dead Sea Depression, 413 meters below sea level. The Danakil Depression, 125 meters below sea level. The Afar Depression, 155 meters below sea level. All these places can be the home, the beginning of a freshwater pipeline that can stretch across the dry areas of our world and start to green them. These atomizer lines wouldn't be placed arbitrarily. We could employ the talents of meteorologists to tell us exactly where these air patterns are most likely to flow and place them where they'll do the most good. The thing to remember is, as this begins to work, it will be rapid. And depending on how many reservoirs and what their capacity and how long you're able to keep the atomizers blowing, the greening will be rapid and consistent. And we can reverse desertification and turn all of these on. There are places out here where ancient rivers once ran. They can run again. We made this mess, but we can fix this mess. So looks like we're coming to the end of the world here. But the most interesting part. So the Danakil and Afar depressions can feed Ethiopia. I didn't put any pipelines in the highlands of Ethiopia, but if they want them there, they can have them there. But Somalia, Sudan, I don't think Saudi Arabia is going to help Egypt, Yemen get theirs. But anyway, the Dead Sea Depression can feed many places: Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iran. Now here is very interesting. Up here, next to Turkmenistan, is the Caspian. Now, it's another body of water, but it's not a candidate for the desalination, for a source of water for desalination, because it's river-fed and groundwater fed. Now, to make use of these depressions, the Khargag Depression at 132 meters below sea level, and another one which I am not going to attempt to pronounce, at 81 meters below sea level, both of these would have to be reached by going across Iran. Is Iran going to let them go across there? I don't know. But that's the only way to feed this area. But Iran, not having a below sea level location of their own, does have a very likely spot in a northern desert over here. And this desert describes a crescent. And if they were to engineer a below sea level location, you see the little purple tag, if they were to engineer a below sea level location there, they could turn fertile this entire desert in their interior. Allowing passage of a pipeline from the Red Sea, not the Red Sea, the Persian, is that Persian Gulf? Wow. From this body of water here, allowing passage of the pipeline would allow all of these nations here to have their water. These I did check out. There's some mountain ranges here I zigzagged around. That's for real. Here in China, We have the Turfan Depression. Now, I just made a straight line from the China Sea here, but any country, any nation, any culture that built the Great Wall of China ought to be able to hand a little pipeline right across through there. Okay, then these pipelines and atomizer lines would take care of the Gobi Desert. Gobi Desert, green. India was very interesting, is very interesting. Because although they don't have a natural below sea level location, if they were to put one here, India has a series of low plateaus that are the result of crumpling. When the Indian subcontinent smashed into the European mainland here, or the Asian mainland, it crumpled. And consequently there are some low formations, topographical formations going across here, and you can run your atomizer lines and your water lines right across here and turn India, all of India, especially this area up here, which is supposed to be very dry, into a garden. Australia, you want to save those? You want to save those reefs? Everybody, please take the Great Barrier Reefs are melting away, right? Now look, you have a below sea level location here, Lake Eyre. From there, you build your freshwater lines and bring water to this stretch of the eastern desert, and the Great Barrier Reefs are along here. You take lines and you pump them. You pump fresh water right into the reefs, wherever you want them. Wherever your biologists say it's a good idea, you pump fresh water from the desalinator straight back into the reef. I think that'd help. Okay, so here, Australia should also have an artificial below sea level location dug for this section of the Northern Territories, or is it Northwestern Territories? Anyway, and they deserve to have their pipelines and atomizer lines also. Get rid of all this desert. The reason we have to get rid of these deserts is because as you green these areas, you have more chlorophyll producing plants, you have more help. It's gonna take a long time to get all of this, all the greenhouse gases converted back to oxygen. We need as much help as we can get. We have to desalinate and green the earth, and we have to do it now. We can't wait. We're running out of time. There are methane deposits just under the surface of the ocean in various places. This is left over from some ice ball Earth incidents that we've had in the past, where the planet was a ball of ice for 70,000 years and stuff like that. Well, that methane froze, turned into a gel, and it's just under the sediments that have landed on top of it in all those thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years since it was ice ball Earth. But if this water gets warm enough, that methane is going to melt. That methane will melt and it's going to join the atmosphere. We have to get control of the water and get it back underground, reduce the capacity of our oceans to retain heat, however imperceptibly at first. But we must return, and the beauty of it is we get to use the water all the way back into the ground. It's not like you're not going to have water. You're going to have water. You're going to have lots and lots and lots of fresh water. You're going to have lots of energy. All these pipelines, every gravity-fed line can be producing electricity for somebody. All these places are going to be producing salt cast into molds, which can be producing homes for somebody. The intakes can be adapted and used to fight pollution, to allow you to rehabilitate bays and harbors. Rio definition. Oh yes, where's the purple tape? And those of you who were in Rio know that Rio absolutely, definitely should have an artificial below sea level location just to clean up their harbor. If they had a siphon intake in Rio Harbor, it would be sucking all that crap up to the desalinator. The desalinator would boil away the water, drop the pollutants and all that nasty crap out with the salts. That water would be boiled and turned into steam. Fresh water could be used to, extend the city backward into the hills, and the electricity could be used to push it back into the hills, maybe evacuate that area and allow Rio to be rebuilt. But I didn't even go to the Olympics. I watched it on television. I wasn't going to swim in that stuff. Oh no. So anyway, this is my idea, and I call it solar fed. Did I cover everything? Yeah. I call it solar fed. Did I say solar fed? I call it siphon fed. Siphon fed solar and nuclear desalination, storage, and redistribution. Some of it sounds like weather augmentation. I just don't want people to call it weather control, because it's not weather control, people. Yes, you're going to be, with this system, you'll be putting huge volumes of water vapor into the air at times of your choosing. You're augmenting weather. It's not really weather control. But that's it. That's my idea. And I'm Burl. And this has been a Burl Built Solution.